The same here. I have like, I think 20 minutes. Yes.
Okay, I think maybe it's working now.
Okay. So I start here. Do you like cut the things then? Will you do be?
I think because it was already recorded, you can just start where you left off, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay.
But have you started the recording?
Yes, I started the recording. So
okay, so recently green coding has emerged as a strategy to optimize software-related energy and resource consumption along the software lifecycle. Oh, that was not where I was taken off, right? Sorry. Cut. I will continue with. So, and another factor is that green coding is not consciously applied in practice, which means there are methods and tools which fall under the category of green coding, but are not necessarily perceived by developers and software designers as green coding practices. And thus, green coding faces implementation challenges. As I said, maybe these are even methods or practices which are part of regular software engineering. So the results I would like to present today is a study that was funded by the German Energy Agency and the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action in Germany. And it's also focused on the software of the German software development landscape. And initially, the goal of the study was to really identify specific numbers of how much energy we can save, how much money we can save by integrating or by implementing green coding practices in the broad. However, as I previously said, when we looked at websites and we talked to our industry contacts, we found out that there are hardly any success stories. We only really found a few, which can be counted on one hand, and respectively didn't find a lot of use cases. So we can serve the goal of saying, okay, you're gonna save 20% of your energy if you do X, Y, Z. So we had to adapt our research question or find new research question, to find out what is actually going on. So we posed three research questions. The first one is, how is the concept of green coding defined and understood in software development? To find out, are there maybe different understandings? What is the current state of adoption and implementation of green coding practices in software development? And what are the key barriers hindering the widespread adoption of green coding practices? With respect to survey design and execution, we developed a survey to address the research question integrating perspective from 5 different areas, namely industry, politics, NGOs, academia, and civil society. We set up an initial workshop in 2024 with 21 participants from the different areas, and developed and refined survey questions in order to address or find answers to our research questions. We developed an expert and an open survey. The expert survey was, the goal participants were actually expert in that area. We wanted to get more knowledge with respect to green coding, and the open survey was addressed or was focusing on basically anybody that could fill out a survey. The survey was distributed via relevant networks from the German Energy Agency, but also diverse sustainability networks. This is definitely also a question of how can this be spread more widely. We discussed this in the paper. In addition to that, we conducted 5 complementary expert interviews where we could dig even deeper, which means 1 expert from each of these fields: industry, politics, NGOs, academia, and civil society. We received 109 open survey responses and 27 expert survey responses, and I'm going to go through the answers through the responses with you together now. So our first research question was, how's the concept of green coding defined and understood in software development? And on the left-hand side, we used 2 questions for that, which are presenting in the paper. The survey was a little broader. They were actually 17 questions in the open survey and in the expert survey, but we extracted some for this paper, which we found to be very relevant to address these research questions. So the first question was, how familiar are you with the term of green coding? And as you can see, the expert survey here on the left-hand side answered 81% that they have applied green coding practices before, and 19% answered that they can imagine what it entails but have never applied it. The open survey looks a little different. Only 17% of the 109 respondents answered that they have applied green coding practices before. 38 have answered they can imagine what it entails but have never applied it. Then I have 26% which have heard of it but cannot provide any technical examples and just have heard the term, and the rest 19% which have never heard of this term. On the right-hand side, we posed the question, what is your, or what do you understand under the term green coding? And this was an open text question, and we wanted to find out what is actually the understanding of this. And we used a classification mechanism where we looked at all the answers and tried to classify or find different categories and classify the answers. So as you can see, 100% of the experts said it's a technical solution. Several answers were possible. 95% of the open survey participants agreed on that. 67% of the experts said it's something ecological, resource conserving, sustainable solutions. 46% of the open survey participants agreed on that. Then we had 11% said it was organizational and management solutions, and 18% of the open survey participants, and 4% experts and 5% of the open survey participants said it was alternative solutions, for example, like open source development. Yeah, I could elaborate on the details a lot more. Then, looking at the second research question, we posed 3 questions. What is the current state of adoption and implementation of green coding practices in software development? The first question here was, in what ways have you already engaged with the topic of green coding? This was a free text question for both the expert and the open survey participants. And here, 38% answered it was professional work. 15% of the open survey participants said it's professional work. Then we have like a similar distribution for academic or educational contacts. Then we have a similar distribution for workshops and conferences. We have 8% of the expert which said where I got to know green coding through self-directed learning, while there's a lot more, like 26% in the open survey. Then we had some answers that didn't specify any sources. What is interesting here is that none of the experts were faced with that term through the press or company-sponsored training, and only 1%, and here 7% from the open survey participant, got into contact with green coding through press coverage or company-sponsored training. Then we had 2 more questions. The first one here on the left-hand side is, in your opinion, how relevant is green coding for reducing the power consumption of digital systems? Was a multiple choice question. You can see here, like of the experts, 63% said they strongly agree or say it's very relevant. 37% say it's rather relevant. On the right-hand side in the open survey, 39% said it's very relevant. 48% says it's rather relevant, and here 7% says rather not relevant, and 2 times 3% not relevant, or they didn't have an opinion on that. Then we also had a question with respect to if people were already measuring their software in sense of resource usage or energy consumption. And here, 31% answered yes, they already measure or know the power consumption of their software, and 69% answered no, with the following reasons: that there's a lack of knowledge about measurement methods, there's no perceived method or relevance, never engaged with the topic before, or measurement perceived as too difficult and time-consuming. So, and this was posed to actually the open survey, this question, the open survey participants. So this was the second research question. Third research questions. What are the key barriers hindering the widespread adoption of green coding practices? The first question was, what obstacles do you encounter in the use or implementation of green coding? This was a free text question for experts. So the obstacles were missing knowledge and training. 70%, 56% said missing standards and measurement methods. Technical and organizational challenges were named by 56%. Economic priorities and lack of incentives, 52%. Regulatory and societal barriers, 26%. Lack of uniform definition, 4%. Insufficient use cases and success stories, 4%. Absence of labels or certifications, 4%. So this is quite a lot. And the other question here was, which reasons do you identify for green coding not currently being the standard in software development? This was also a free text question for experts. It's, as I said, quite similar. There's also a lack of awareness and knowledge, economic priorities, and insufficient pressure. If you are in software development, you know that feature comes first before, let's say, even quality or technical depth. Absence of standards and best practices. So what to optimize towards if there's no standards, what should I do? Cultural and social factors. This I found very interesting because there were some people who expressed, okay, I can't change anything anyway, so why would I do it with software? I don't have a big impact at all. And then third, we have technological and organizational hurdles. Even if I am in software development and I want to use such a tool, I can't implement it or I can't install it because I'm missing the organizational rights for this. So in summary, I would like to summarize the findings for the three research questions and actually the recommendations we made towards also our federal ministry, what to do in order to get green coding into broader implementation. So with respect to the understanding of green coding, there's actually a broad spectrum of interpretations with mainly a technical focus. There's no universally accepted or standardized definition, as we've seen or as I've presented at the very beginning. And there's a lack of clarity complicates comparison of techniques and success measurement. The recommendations here is, maybe work on a definition for green coding and integrate industry and academia. Try to standardize the terminology that comes with it. Collect clear guidelines and best practices. There are actually quite some best practices and guidelines out there, also, for example, from the Green Software Foundation, but these need to be collected and brought together, and definitely integrate green coding definitions in training programs and also education. I think we've heard this several times today. The current state of adoption and implementation. In summary, the engagement is fragmented and exploratory. There are some people who do that, but not on the broad scale. Experts are more involved with green coding via their profession and academic channels. The measurement of power consumption and power consumption, maybe also resource usage is not broadly practiced. There are people who do that, but it's not practiced in broad because, obviously there are also missing goals, and institutional support and tools are largely missing. There are tools out there, definitely, but it's not that they are easy to use and can be easily implemented. Recommendations here: integrate green coding into existing development workflows. For this purpose, of course, we need tools which are easily to be integrated. Promote the use of measurement tools for software energy consumption. Provide training to raise awareness. We've seen that not a lot of people have been presented with training, for example, at their company. And develop practical, easy-to-use tools for adoption in industry. These two actually go together. So in our third research question, what are the key barriers? Yes, we found out that we have a major knowledge and training deficits. Furthermore, if we talk with developers, there's a lack of standardized measurement methods and This was also named, if I had a label, for example, to say, okay, this is a sustainable software, or this is green software, or this is a software that has been developed with green coding practices, that would help also, especially for end consumers. Then economic and organizational constraints dominate decision-making and absence of regulatory incentives. So why would I do that if it's not regulated? Recommendations: develop standardized metrics and measurement methods, foster organizational support and incentives for sustainable practices, and encourage cultural organizational change towards sustainability in software engineering. And so I've come to a conclusion. In summary, green coding is recognized as a promising approach, especially also in industry. However, the current implementation remains fragmented and inconsistent. As we've seen, key barriers: lack of definition, lack of standardized metrics and practical tools, deficits in training, awareness, and economic incentives, or better to say, the economic incentives that hinder the adoption. And definitely what I have to say here last, the study is limited to the German scope, which means there is probably a sample bias in that. And that would also be part of future work, that we would like to extend this study a little further, because that was, as I said, one of the German Energy Agency and the Federal Ministry, and they were actually interested in Germany. Thank you very much. Should I stop it?
Yes.